Hi, everybody. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in to my last hot dog review. I just got back from watching the final film that I was seeing at the festival. It was called Fed Up, American documentary, and the director is Stephanie Soechtig. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Forgive me if I'm getting that wrong. Anyway, boy, how can I review a movie after watching Alice Cooper? That's a tough one. I just want to see it again. But anyway, let me get to this one. Okay, so this movie was about the food industry, the obesity epidemic in the U.S., and health, nutrition, all that kind of thing. This movie reiterated a lot of stuff that I've already heard and that I already know, but I know it is a very important film because there is an obesity epidemic in the United States, and no matter how many people try to deny that and argue about it, it's a fact. It simply is a fact. And it's the same here in Canada, and I'm sure in Europe too. In pretty much all, developed countries, obesity has become very, very common. And I don't really like the word epidemic because I just don't like the negativity associated with that, because I don't believe that just because a person is overweight, it means they're unhealthy. And of course, epidemic is associated with disease. So, anyway, people can argue back and forth about this, all day. The point is that there are a lot more overweight people now than there were 50 years ago. And the reason is because of the food industry. And I really like the way that this documentary exposed the truth of the fact that fat people are not to blame for their fat. The cards are stacked against them. People who are naturally prone to become overweight because of their genetics or environment or whatever it is, have the cards even more stacked against them because of all the stuff that is sold to us, all the food that we're surrounded by, the marketing, and especially children. This movie really, really focused on child obesity and how it has risen in staggering numbers. And how, kids are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, where, 50 years ago that was completely unheard of. I think there was one statistic that said, God, I can't remember the exact, dates and all that, but I'm going to say about 20 years ago or 50 years ago, the number of type 2 diabetes cases for children was 0, and now it's about, per year, it's I shouldn't say the number because I can't remember, but it was a huge number. Okay, I'm gonna at least 500,000 or something. That's what I think it was. I can't remember exactly. Forgive me if I'm getting that wrong, but it wouldn't surprise me. Okay, and this film followed 4 kids. 4 families, and, teenagers who were obese, had a weight problem. One of them was a boy named Brady, I remember. A girl named, I think, Maggie, she was so sweet. I loved her. And she was a very active kid. She was on the swim team. She was always exercising. She was a very active kid. Is a very active kid. And there was another boy named... God, I can't remember all their names, but there were 2 more boys. One of them, a 15-year-old Latino boy, ended up going for bypass surgery. That's another thing. Teenagers now are going for fucking gastric bypass surgery. I think he weighed 400 pounds or something. The other kids were in the 200 range. So they were talking about how 50% of the schools in the U.S. have fast food in their cafeterias. 50%. I didn't even realize that fast food was in cafeterias. I actually thought that they made their food. I knew a lot of cafeteria food is terrible, that it was all processed stuff, but I thought they at least made it there. But no, 50% of the schools have McDonald's, Arby's, all kinds of stuff in there, on a daily basis. And it's shocking. It really is shocking. And, It was talking a little bit about Michelle Obama's campaign, which has been a turnoff to me from the very beginning. And, she started off all enthusiastic about it and, kind of pressuring or suggesting, but pressuring the food companies to kind of reformulate their processed foods and make them healthier and stuff like that. But it appears now she has kind of backed off of that, and so that we shouldn't demonize the food industry, and she refused to be interviewed for the film. So there you go right there. So not a fan of her in that, and what I feel is like a bogus campaign. Getting back and blaming the kids for being fat and not moving enough and not exercising enough, where they were saying in the movie that no matter how much exercise you do, it doesn't matter. Like, to work off one can of pop or something, a kid would have to ride their bike for like an hour and a half, I mean, seriously, come on, one can of pop, that is, all right? And they were talking about how sugar is in everything. Sugar is poison. It's in everything, and it's got different names. They don't always call it sugar. It's got a whole bunch of different names. High fructose corn syrup. I don't know what else, but tons and tons of different names. And sugar is really what's killing people. It's causing so much disease, and stuff like that. And the food industry started using sugar in great proportions because they found that it could flavor their foods a lot better and make them taste better, because there was a big low-fat campaign a couple of decades ago, and that's when they started replacing sugar in all the foods to make them more palatable. And so that's how they got into all this. And it's just like the big food industry is just like big tobacco. It's like, the tobacco industry was denying for so many years that nicotine was addictive, that smoking caused cancer and all this. And then, of course, all this evidence came out that it did, and that nicotine was addictive. And so now they can't advertise on TV anymore. Their billboard advertising has been severely restricted. So, the tobacco industry finally had to cave in and play ball with some of the regulations. But so far, the food industry has been allowed to run riot. They run amok. They're diseasing people. They're killing people, and specifically children, really, because so much of their advertising and marketing is targeted towards kids, like with all the cereals and candy and McDonald's and shit like that, So this movie, it told me a lot of stuff that I already knew. What I did like about it, like I said, was the fact that it didn't demonize fat people and blame fat people for being fat. And it also said, although it didn't cover it as much as it should have, but it was also saying that just because you're a thin person doesn't mean you're a healthy person. And that thin people can have fat on the inside of their bodies that's just as prone to give them diseases as fat people. So you could be just as prone to type 2 diabetes if you're thin, if you have fat in the right places in your body and the right proportions of fat and all that. So, just because, and this is what always drives me crazy, is these thin people go off on their high horse and say, oh, you fat people are lazy, and you fat people eat the wrong foods, and you don't exercise, and you don't do this, and you don't do that. In the meantime, their diets are like horrible. And, God knows what else they're doing, smoking, drinking, whatever, right? Yet they lord it over fat people and tell us that we're so unhealthy. In the meantime, take a look at yourself and your own lifestyle. And just because you're thin doesn't mean that, that you're healthy. But, one thing that did confuse me about this, and I was wondering through the whole movie, was that, we have all this junk food around us, surrounding us everywhere, right? And that's another thing they were saying, like, junk food is now, like, in every store. Like, if you go to a gas station now, they have, like, tons of junk food in there. That didn't used to be there a few decades ago, It's been relatively recent. You go to, like, a hardware store and there's candy there. It's like, it's everywhere. You cannot get away from it, right? And I was thinking, like, all kids eat this shit. All kids are exposed to this stuff, yet not every kid is fat. There are plenty of skinny kids around. And I couldn't help but wonder, why are there skinny kids? Why do these kids not gain weight? Why are they not having an obesity problem where these other kids do? That's one thing to me that the movie didn't really answer, and that I was wondering through the whole thing. But yeah, it was, this movie pissed me off, because of the, just, typical, right? These big fucking corporations refusing to give up their meal ticket for public health because it's going to cost them too much money. They're making too much profit, so they refuse to stop selling their products. At least reformulate them so they're healthier. Maybe they tweak it a little bit here and there so that, they reduce like 0.1% of sugar in it or something, but they don't really do anything, anything really meaningful or beneficial. It's just a show. It's just a show to, like pretend, oh yeah, we're so concerned about public health. Yeah, we're doing everything we can, but please, So it made me angry seeing that side of it, but this is a very important movie. I'm sure you're going to see it on TV. This was also an E1. E1 was involved in this, so you might see it come out in the theaters, and I'm sure you'll see it on TV. So yeah, I would recommend watching it. It's an important movie, What can I say? That's all I'm going to say, because I'm tired. I've had a long day, and I'm gonna call it a day here. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you if you watched my reviews, if you followed me through the festival. I hope you enjoyed them. And I will be back in September, of course, with TIFF, because I attend that every year. And back with more reviews just whenever I see movies here and there, whenever and wherever I see them. So thanks a lot for watching, you guys, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.